Air in Gettysburg, Pennsylvania is always heavy with history, battle, death, and now, something darker. On July 13, 2025, that weight became unbearable for the paranormal world. Dan Rivera, U.S. Army veteran and hand-picked successor to Ed and Lorraine Warren, was found dead in his hotel room. Rivera was more than an investigator. He was a guardian, entrusted with the Warrens' most dangerous artifacts. He led the New England Society for Psychic Research, bridging old-school protection rituals with modern outreach. His mission: educate the public about the reality of evil and the risks of the supernatural. The Devils on the Run tour was his crusade, bringing infamous objects like Annabelle to the masses. But after a sold-out 3-day event, Dan was gone, consumed by the darkness he fought. His death sent shockwaves through the community, validating our deepest fears. We all know the dangers of this field, but Dan was meticulous, experienced, and respected. The timing was chilling. He died just after showcasing Annabelle. The paranormal community is tight-knit. Dan was a leader, mentor, and friend. He appeared on most haunted places and produced for 28 Days Haunted, always prioritizing safety. His death wasn't just a headline. It was a stark reminder of the stakes. It forced us to question, are we truly in control, or are we just fooling ourselves? For Dan Rivera, the answer came in the silence of a Gettysburg hotel room. The loss was more than personal. It was a warning. The objects we study, the entities we provoke, are we prepared for the consequences? Dan's legacy is now forever tied to the darkness he tried to contain. The world watched and then he was gone. The abyss stared back, and this time it claimed one of our own. To understand Dan Rivera's fate, you must understand Annabelle. Not a movie prop, not a toy, a vessel. The real Annabelle is a Raggedy Ann doll, but its history is anything but innocent. In the 1970s, it was gifted to a nursing student. Joy turned to fear as the doll moved on its own. It left cryptic notes on parchment paper the owners didn't possess. Desperate, they called a medium, who claimed the doll was inhabited by a lonely child spirit, Annabelle Higgins. Moved by pity, the students gave permission for the spirit to stay. That was their fatal mistake. The playful energy vanished, replaced by something malevolent. A friend was attacked, paralyzed, strangled, left with 3 bloody claw marks. This was no child's ghost. It was something inhuman, demonic. Ed and Lorraine Warren were called in. They knew spirits don't possess objects, demons do. The doll was a conduit, a tool for terror and possession. The Warrens performed an exorcism and took Annabelle for safekeeping. Even the drive home was harrowing. Brakes failed, steering locked, near disaster. Only holy water subdued the entity long enough to get home. Annabelle's true history is one of deception, violence, and fear. It's not just a haunted doll, it's a predator. Dan Rivera toured the country with this object, fully aware of its legacy. He knew the risks, but believed the public needed to see the reality of evil. Annabelle's story is a warning. Evil can hide behind innocence. Permission is the key. Once given, it's almost impossible to take back. The Warrens' intervention saved lives, but the threat never left. Annabelle remains locked away, but her influence endures. This is the object at the center of Dan Rivera's final days, and perhaps the force that claimed him. The Devils on the Run tour was Dan Rivera's way of bringing the Warrens' warnings to the public. The old occult museum was closed, but this tour offered a rare, controlled encounter with evil. Gettysburg Soldiers' National Orphanage, already haunted, was the perfect setting. Over 1,200 tickets sold. People drawn by curiosity, belief, and fear. Dan was no showman. He was a protector, enforcing strict safety protocols. Annabelle was kept in a reinforced case, surrounded by crosses and holy water. Dan blessed the area before every showing, creating a circle of protection. The atmosphere was electric. Anticipation and dread hung in the air. Dan recounted Annabelle's history, emphasizing respect and the dangers of demonic attachments. He never provoked, never challenged. He let the object's history speak for itself. For 3 days the event was a viral sensation. Attendees reported dizziness, dread, and cold spots near the doll. Dan managed it all with calm authority, ensuring everyone's safety. He was at the peak of his career, carrying the Warrens' legacy forward. But as the final session ended, no one knew the true horror was just beginning. The Guardian was about to become the victim, and the darkness was waiting. The final event ended Sunday evening. Dan oversaw the careful packing of Annabelle, following every protocol. He was proud but exhausted, a familiar toll for any investigator. He mentioned feeling unwell, a common aftermath of intense events. Dan returned to his hotel room alone, planning to rest. Hours passed. Calls went unanswered. Knocks brought only silence. Concern grew among his team. Hotel staff opened the door to a quiet tragedy. Dan Rivera was dead. No signs of struggle, no evidence of violence or medical emergency. The room was undisturbed. Authorities found nothing unusual or suspicious. He was simply gone. The silence from the investigation was deafening. The coroner ordered an autopsy. Results would take weeks. Into that vacuum rushed fear, speculation, and one name: Annabelle. Had the doll, from its secure case, finally claimed its most high-profile victim? The whispers began. Dan Rivera didn't just die, he was taken. The final stop on his tour became his own. In the digital age, fear spreads faster than facts. The Devils on the Run tour was already viral, but Dan's death ignited a firestorm. Social media exploded with theories. Annabelle's curse had struck again. TikTok videos paired Dan's image with Annabelle's, fueling hysteria. The hashtag Annabelle curse trended for days. Friends and colleagues pleaded for respect, but their voices were drowned out. For many, Dan's death became the ultimate ghost story, proof of the supernatural. The line between folklore and fact blurred. The Annabelle legend grew, amplified by the global reach of social media. Dan's tragedy became a digital monument to fear. The doll was no longer just a creepy artifact. It was a predator in the public imagination, and the legend only grew stronger. I've stood before the real Annabelle doll. It's not the porcelain horror from the movies, it's a child's toy, and that's what makes it terrifying. The evil hides behind innocence. The air around the case is heavy, cold, and charged with dread. You feel watched, sized up by something ancient. Dan would guide visitors, reminding them to ground themselves and not give in to fear. Many reported headaches, nausea, or overwhelming sadness near the doll. These are classic signs of a negative presence seeking a weakness. The feeling lingers long after you leave. Dan stood in that psychic radiation day after day, shielding others. Did 3 days in Gettysburg finally break his shield? Did the thing in the box find a way through? That question haunts us still. Dan Rivera's death isn't the first tragedy linked to Annabelle. The doll's history is a pattern of violence and fear. A skeptical priest once mocked Annabelle. Hours later, he survived a horrific car crash. A young man taunted the doll at the Warren Museum. He died in a motorcycle accident that same day. These stories form a terrifying mosaic. Disrespect is met with retribution. Dan Rivera never provoked, always respected. But his death raises a new fear. Maybe the entity no longer needs provocation. Perhaps simple proximity is enough. Annabelle's legend is built on real consequences. The pattern is clear. Those who underestimate the evil pay the price. Dan's approach was caution, but even that may not have been enough. The entity's reach seems to be growing. The line between legend and reality is razor thin, and the cost of crossing it is higher than ever. The curse endures. While the internet burned with theories, the official investigation moved slowly. Authorities found nothing suspicious. No evidence, no Annabelle in Dan's room. Ness PR confirmed the doll was secured after the event. If Annabelle was involved, it was from a distance. A more terrifying thought for believers. Weeks passed with no answers. The curse narrative solidified. The final report may offer a medical explanation, but for many it won't be enough. The timing, the circumstances, too precise, too poetic. The official story will always compete with chilling folklore. The silence of the investigation ensures the mystery will endure, and the legend only grows. Dan Rivera's death changed paranormal investigation forever. He's remembered as a dedicated investigator and as a cautionary tale. The Devils on the Run tour continues, but under a cloud of danger. Annabelle is now more than a creepy artifact, she's an active threat. Dan's death gave her curse terrifying credibility. The fear she generates is palpable, amplified by social media. Was Dan's death a tragic coincidence, or the final move of a patient, malevolent entity? The question lingers. What do you believe? The story forces us to confront our own beliefs about evil, and perhaps that's the most terrifying part of all.